It's Tuesday, June 18th, 2013. Live from rural Pickens, South Carolina, where it's raining cats and dogs. I'm Matthew T.G.
One of the dogs is right here. I'm Heath Mulligan.
And I'm Tony Casey. Welcome to the Techology Show, a weekly podcast featuring technology, theology, and everything in between. This is episode 207, and you notice how sunny it is out there, raining cats and dogs?
Yes.
Oh,
It's got to be a rainbow somewhere.
Hold on, I haven't looked out the window in a while. So
The producer has his back to the window. He had no idea that the rain has passed and it's sunny outside.
Okay, well, live from sunny Pickens, South Carolina.
Yeah, all right. Heath, let's talk about our giveaway.
Hey, we are giving away 3 boxes of these Theologian trading cards straight from Zondervan. We want to thank them for this giveaway. You can go to thetechologyshow.com/giveaway to enter. Enter as often as you like. We've been talking about these the past several weeks, and I believe that we are going to be giving those away on July the 2nd.
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember. Let me double check on that.
I thought we had one more week. I thought it was next
think we
week.
do.
Maybe, I think
One
y'all,
more
want,
week.
Well,
y'all
I
wanted
don't
to
know.
do
One
it
more
when
week.
I'm
I don't know.
gone.
Oh,
Hold
no,
on.
last week.
Hold on. I will confirm and let you know because
Yeah.
I may have set that up differently. I don't remember.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right.
Yes.
So last Monday was the big anticipated Worldwide Developers Conference for Apple. And,
Next week.
And is it next week?
Next
Giveaway?
week.
Yeah, that's
Next
what I
week.
thought. Next
Okay.
week we'll give away the trading cards. So enter as many times as you want. Get in
Yes.
on that. The Worldwide Developers Conference, I would say the biggest story, there are lots of stories. Biggest story was iOS 7.
Yes.
It's going to be a whole new operating system for
Yes.
the iOS devices, iPad, iPhone. One of the things that I'm hearing, there was a developer on This Week in Tech, and they said that this is the buggiest beta that Apple has released. But it kind of makes sense because if you watch the show or watch the press conference or the keynote, I should say,
Yeah.
it's a redesign of
Yeah,
iOS.
it's a redesign with a lot of new features. Essentially,
Yes.
every great jailbreak feature that ever's been known to man.
Yeah.
The Apple said, "Hey, let's do that."
Right.
And it's taken it and put it in there. And if you've ever jailbroken your phone before, you know that that's a buggy experience too. So it's no wonder as they work to get the jailbreaks right.
The thing that we have talked about amongst ourselves here is the little bit of disappointment with this was that this was kind of Apple playing catch up because a lot of the things that they're adding in iOS 7 are things that Android users already have. And so while it may be new for, if you've been an iPhone user for a while, you're like, oh, cool, we got this. And Android users are like, okay.
And that's their message though. That is the message that they are running with. It's this idea of saying,
Yeah.
we're playing perfection, not innovation anymore. And it's an interesting stance for them to take. A company that has been the innovators or were in this world of smartphones, where the innovators are now, stepping away from that to me, in my observation and going for, okay, now we're gonna make it perfect. And that's their idea of perfect. It's not always perfect, trust me. So you guys are excited about iOS 7 to gearheads like myself.
I'm curious, Matthew. You actually are working with Android and iOS 7 because you have a Nexus phone.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious from your perspective. So you and I have talked about that the benefit of iOS 7, because we're Apple users, is the whole ecosystem that they build. So if you can, for a moment, kind of separate the ecosystem and just look at the two operating systems. I'm curious, at this point, your experience.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it just depends on what you mean with that. Because if you're talking about stock Android, just boiled down to its very basics, Android means so many things right now.
I agree.
It does.
Yeah,
I mean,
it does.
it depends on what phone you have as to what Android means. So I don't know that you can really answer that question because for me, I've rooted, got a custom ROM called Paranoid Android on this, got a custom launcher, all that kind of stuff to customize it to what I feel like is best.
Yeah.
But that doesn't, stock I don't know. I don't even know how I'd answer that question.
But to me,
They're two different things. The thing that's great and the thing that we hope for is that even though, what we're reading and hearing right now is that it's very buggy, and you can see some of that if you go to different websites like Mac Rumors or 9 to 5 Mac. You can really see some of the issues that are with iOS 7 now.
That's what I'm hearing.
The big thing has always been the interoperability of stuff. And what's huge to me that my Android phone can't do is I can't go into my kids' room on Wednesday night, turn on my TV, and shoot whatever I have off of my phone up there and do like the world of things working together in harmony is
clearly
so superior to anything else that there is. So but I wanted to talk gear a little bit just real quick because it's an amazing redesign of a Mac Pro. Can we not talk about that?
Yeah, you can talk about it. Listen, if you'll get the camera off of me and let me go out, I'll go get the prototype of the. I've got the prototype. So you two can talk about it for one second.
So you're talking about the one that has the Death Star plans on it.
Yeah,
the Darth Vader,
Mini Botham
remake.
Listen, very interesting to somebody who loves hardware. My initial reaction was, no, this is awful. It's become something that the longer I've thought about it and been reading about it, the more I begin to savor what exactly they're doing here. And I'm very interested to see what's going to happen as they switch a Pro line to where all expandability is now happening over these Thunderbolt ports, which are incredible. I'm excited to see what's going to happen down that road. Very interesting product design. I said to you from Macworld 2000.
The first Mac Mini.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't the first Mac Mini. It was Apple's first try, essentially, 13 years ago, of taking a power computer and shrinking it down to this little tiny thing, and it was beautiful, but it was terrible because I have this theory, and we've talked about it before. Apple is a company that walks this delicate line between form and function. They always are trying to balance themselves in the best position of those two, and sometimes the pendulum swings the wrong direction. And so the G4 Cube was form ahead of function. And that played out as those things were used, but it was a beautiful machine. I mean, it's something that even today, 13 years later, people look back on and say that was amazing. It was ahead of its time design-wise. And now we might be at a point with these expandability, these huge bandwidth channels that you can get through a Thunderbolt 2 port, where a design like that, where the form may able to actually keep up with the function and be something great. I'm excited.
Well, yeah, we'll see.
Anybody that wants to buy me one when they come out.
Yeah.
I will.
We don't even know what the price tag's going to be on that.
No.
So.
Go to thetechnologyshow.com/sponsorship.
All right, listen, we've got our guest waiting patiently today. We want to welcome Bill Peed to the show. Before going to Kingswood University in 2003, Bill and his wife, Marilee, served with Global Partners as missionaries to Zambia, Africa for 21 years in church planting, evangelism, and leadership development ministries. He understands the need for specialized training in cross-cultural ministry for God-called individuals to be effective and competent in presenting biblical truths to other people groups. For his PhD dissertation, he researched perceptions of missionary competency and is using the findings as director of a global ministry program. He seeks to prepare next-generation missionaries to declare God's word to the nations around the world. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tony. It's great to be with you guys.
Yeah, so you're not a total stranger to the Technology Show studio. You actually were down here, 2-3 weeks ago. We conducted an interview. You sat in studio for our Rosaria Butterfield interview.
That's right. It was very interesting to sit with you three guys.
Yeah, well, to say the least. To be with us is always interesting, Bill.
And notice that after finding out how hot it gets in this room during our show, Bill has opted to not be with us for this interview. Wise choice, sir.
Well, we've had plenty of rain up this way. You can have it down your way right now.
Oh, listen, we've had all kinds of rain. Listen, the real, you think you're on the show to be interviewed, but really, we know that you're an hour ahead of us, and so all we want are stock tips. We're hoping that in the next hour we can cheat the market a little bit. So,
Well, you guys are Apple freaks down there, so I've got just a couple of observations about what you've been saying before I get into this material. One is, Apple sounds a lot like the contextualized gospel, form and function. So you ought to have somebody on your show sometime that talks about that. And the other thing is, will iOS 7 mess up my iPad so that I can't see my grandkids starting to walk? I need to know that.
we'll be working on that, Bill. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I would wait to the fall.
All right. Well, Bill, you and I had the opportunity to attend a theological symposium together a couple weeks ago. I thought one of the most interesting presentations given was Kingwood's presentation. And the school has taken a fresh look at curriculum, both inside, outside the classroom. Why don't you begin to unpack for us, this whole thing and what this means in terms of the formal classroom experience at Kingswood University, what students are experiencing there?
All right. Let me back up just a little bit, Tony. And when we were going through our whole curriculum change a couple of years ago, we first started using the curriculum last September. So we'll be moving into year 2 this coming September. But we looked at everything that Kingswood does. And really, I think that's the way it ought to be done, because it really took us back. Our Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Dave Smith, took us back through this journey where we spent literally hundreds of hours as a faculty thinking through what is curriculum. I mean, that was at the base of what we was looking at. What is curriculum? And that really took us back to the Latin understanding of the word, which has to do with curriculum is everything that you do in shaping a person. It's not just what you do, for example, in a syllabus or in a classroom, but it's everything. It's what you do in the classroom. It's what you do outside the classroom. It's what you do very intimately. And so that has shaped us as we've looked at what our curriculum is here at Kingswood. And so when we talk about, maybe we'll spend some time talking about formal education and non-formal and informal. But when we talk about formal education, what it's looking like now at Kingswood is that we were concerned with 2 or 3 things. One is we wanted the curriculum to be a holistic. In other words, we wanted to shape the whole person, not just give a lot of cognitive dumping information into a person's mind, but we really wanted to shape what the whole person is. The person's, of course, what they know, but in terms of what they become, in terms of the attitudes that they possess, in terms of the ministry skills that they have, and so forth. And so we wanted it to be holistic, but we also wanted it not to be the discipline of, let's say, counseling, or the discipline of missions, or the discipline of theology. We wanted it to be integrated, and so that was a huge part of our discussion. So it was holistic, it was integrated. And then thirdly, we looked at, in our formal education, we wanted it to be outcomes based. And here at Kingswood, we used to be known as, I don't know if I can say that on the air, so I can't really say the name of what we used to be, but we used to be.
Well, we can bleep it out, Bill.
And so our 3 big outcomes right now is we're really focused on academic excellence and holy character and ministry effectiveness. And so when we think about formal education, we've divided, in terms of that piece of the curriculum, we've divided our 4-year experience roughly into thirds, and that has to do with what we call general education. I don't really like the term myself. I would prefer the term total education, because general just kind of says, well, you kind of chunk that out of the way and get it done, and then you forget it. But in terms of, those are some basic pieces of knowledge that we ought to have. So about a third of the 4-year experience is general education. About a third of the program, or the 4-year program here, is in Bible and theology. So you spend about 40 hours or so in Bible and theology. You almost graduate with another degree in Bible and theology. And the other third is your particular professional track that you're in. For example, I head up the Global Ministries program, so I work with students who are preparing for missionary service somewhere around the world. And so those are kind of the formal educations that that students would get here, and they really are shaping experiences. So if we had, for example, someone, Tony, from your church come and wanted to come to school at Kingswood, what we would say, this is what going to get on a formal, that is to say, a classroom experience where they have that time. That's what is formal.
We know that in the process of restructuring the curriculum at Kingswood, that you've really taken seriously this idea of non-formal learning experiences. So define what the school means by informal, and also talk about Pulse Days as part of the non-formal experiences.
Sure, sure. When we think about, when you look at education and you use these terms, you banter these terms around non-formal, formal, informal, the actual meaning sometimes gets a little bit fuzzy. But when I think about non-formal education, I think about an education that is not so structured as a classroom experience, but yet there's some clear intentionality about it. And so when I think of non-formal experiences, those are experiences that happen outside the classroom that are very powerful, shaping experiences. Like, for example, chapel that we have here twice a week. When I first came to teach here 10 years ago, that was one of the things that drew me. I had heard of the chapel services at this institution that I now teach at, and that was just a powerful shaping, and it continues to be. That's one of the highlights of the week, or two of the highlights of the week, are those chapel experiences. Discipleship groups are another non-formal experience. There's very intentionality where students come and they are in a group. Every student here at Kingswood, we have about 200 students. Every student is in what we call a discipleship group, in which we move through, let's say, a passage of scripture or a Bible book through the semester or through the whole year. And so once a week we will meet with that discipleship group. And every year since we've been here, my wife and I have had a discipleship group. She has a group of young ladies, and I meet with a group of young men, 6 to 8, 7 or 8 guys that we meet together on a weekly basis. Student ministries. This is something that a student has to do. A local ministry, like, for example, they will go to one of the local towns, St. John or Moncton perhaps, or they'll be involved here in Sussex with, let's say, helping out in a children's ministry, or helping in a soup kitchen in St. John, some kind of student ministry where that's part of the formal curriculum, but it's a non-formal activity. Probably the capstone to our experience, and I'll talk about Pulse, Heath, to get to your question in just a second, is the internship experience, where again it's not an experience in the classroom, but it's an experiential learning. So what students have studied theoretically for 3 or 3.5 years, they will go now and do in a local internship experience for 4 to 6 months. For example, as I work with global students, students will head out. For example, I've got a young lady. She's going to the Philippines this summer to do 4 months of internship. I had a guy just finish up an internship in sports ministries in Tokyo this summer. Another guy was in a country that I can't mention the name of, but he just had a powerful learning experience in that place. So every student, almost every student, we have a couple of programs that don't do that, but almost every student does an internship. Again, it's a non-formal, but it's certainly a clearly focused kind of experience that they have. And Heath, you mentioned Pulse. A piece of the curriculum that we developed last year is that we now have classes on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. So a class will meet Monday and Thursday, or Tuesday and Friday. And we have reserved Wednesdays to have experiences, what we call Pulse Day experiences, in which it is some issue that we talk about related to the head, or some issue related to the heart, or some issue related to the hand. For example, related to the heart, we had Dr. Craig Evans come, world-renowned expert and scholar on the Dead Sea Scrolls. He teaches at a seminary not far from here. And it was just a powerful experience for us to hear from this expert how can we trust the scriptures? And he just took us back and built his whole case on that. Related to the heart, we had a panel discussion on taking the so-called Wesleyan quadrilateral
Okay.
and looking at the quadrilateral and then looking at the doctrine of entire sanctification and saying, how do you look at this doctrine from a tradition, from a scriptural, from a reasonable, and from an experiential perspective? And that was a powerful experience. And then we've had issues related to the hand in which we've gone out into the community. One day, we have a holiday, very powerful day up here called Remembrance Day, which is much like Veterans Day down in the United States. And on that day, we went in the community and we handed out cookies, just in appreciation for being involved in the community and our acceptance into the community. Cookies were passed out to every home in the community. Another day, we passed out the Jesus film to every household in the community. Probably the most powerful one of the Pulse experiences was we went to St. John. St. John's a city 45 minutes from us. It's the oldest city in Canada. And the greater St. John area has about 100,000 people. And we took the whole campus. So almost every student, almost every faculty and staff went that day, and we served St. John. In fact, that's what the Pulse Day was called, Serve St. John, in which we went to 22 different kinds of ministries, soup kitchens, aids, hospices. I went to the Salvation Army and served the men there. And so the whole city was just impacted. We prayed for the mayor that morning, and it was just a very powerful experience. So that Pulse Day has really given us an extra kind of learning experience, and it's just very powerfully impacted us as a community.
Yeah, Bill, also talk about, it's kind of a third dimension here, and that's informal. And for me, sometimes the informal and the non-formal kind of bleed, in together. So what distinctions would you make about informal?
I wonder, I don't know if your listeners, if they see you guys kind of going on before the show actually comes live. I don't know if they see that or not, but when I was watching you...
Wait. We try to protect them from that, Bill. Okay.
Well, folks, let me send you my email address and you can write and I'll tell you what. When I think of informal, I think of kind of those impromptu, those spur of the moment. Learning opportunities and shaping experiences, those conversations you have walking up and down the sidewalk. Or up here, it might be those conversations you might have outside shoveling the snow, when we got snow coming down. But it's just those kind of those, they might be impromptu or they might be planned, but yet they come up, they just happen. Someone has said that professors are the curriculum.
Oh, man.
And we try to work hard at Kingswood with having a powerful connection between the faculty and the students here. And so one of the things I invite my students to do is I give them the opportunity to earn just a little bit of their grade, just to come in and talk to me so that we can begin to develop a relationship.
That's good.
And so usually my first question is, so tell me about yourself. And the student will say, well, what do you want to know? And I'll say, well, you tell me whatever you want to know. Tell me. And I have heard such powerful beginning stories. Like I remember one young lady came in and said, well, I've never known a day without pain. And she just kind of began to share her story a little bit. Those are informal times, just those kinds that pop up. These role modeling opportunities that happen when you can't really plan for them. It's like the Spirit orchestrates them and brings them together. Some things that happen which are more informal is in our dormitory life, where we have dorm chaplains and there are prayer meetings going on, where again it's just having student leaders who are available to speak into students' lives that happen. And so it's this idea, I think, behind informal of accessibility of faculty and staff and students being accessible just to to make available an opportunity times for those shaping experiences to happen.
You know, I think of a couple of things here, Bill. One of the things that hit me hard at the conference you and I attended a few weeks ago was this idea when they said that the professor or the teacher is the curriculum. And for me, people who know my story know that I give a lot of credit to Bob Black, that there was a 180-degree turn in my life as a result of having him. And I've often said, now Dr. Bob Black is a brilliant man. Now, having said that, I've always said that it wasn't that his classroom content was superior. He was the curriculum. It was the person of Bob Black. And so I was formed by him way more outside of the classroom. It was in those conversations that weren't planned. He gave me his telephone number and the freedom to call him at home. It was those times. I also think about just an informal experience you and I had when you were down here some years ago. And we went to visit the church where you pastored. At that time, the church was closed. We went through, and we both kind of had a question about the Mill Church. And all of a sudden, I said, well, hey, you know, Dr. Virgil Mitchell lives 10 minutes away from here. And you and I drove over, and we spent an hour on his porch. It was just the three of us. And the point is this, that was educative. It was formative for us.
Sure.
Yeah, but there wasn't a syllabus, and it wasn't a classroom, and yet it was a learning experience.
I don't know if you can see right here, right? Where'd my finger go?
No,
here?
We can't see. How can we see that? How can we see that, Bill?
You see that right there?
What did you do?
There's a picture right up there.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get there.
What are you doing? All you had to do is point at the picture, Bill.
I'm looking. It's like my little granddaughter. We were my daughter said, "Can you babysit for us for a while?" So she put her iPad down on the floor, and my granddaughter goes crawling away. 10 feet later, she turns around to look, see if we're coming. Well, I'm looking to see what to do up here. Anyway, so
you need to have a private session with us, Bill.
On that picture are about 8 or 9 students that graduated 6 or 7 years ago, and they were my first internship class. And I tell you, these kind of intimate kind of learning experiences where you have these formal experiences in the classroom, but you know what you guys have been through college and university. You know what the syllabus calls for, and you've got dates and timelines and expectations to get done. Well, in an informal setting, you can kind of lay all that aside. You can develop some deep relationships, and some of those folk are still in missions, and I still get emails from them, and I still have invitations to come to their home, and they have invitations from us when they're up our way to come. And it's just that education and learning and shaping continues far past a semester or a career at a school.
Hey, Bill, let me ask you one of the questions in the chat room. I would love to get your take on this, but how do we, the topic in the chat room is teaching about spiritual warfare. I know you and your family spent a few years ministering in Zambia. I know in other cultures there's just a whole different view of spiritual warfare. Can you talk about that experience in Zambia, but also how in a Canadian context, American context, how do we inform students about, what do you do when you encounter someone who is, demonically possessed or oppressed? And I know you can't necessarily set that up during their college years to say, okay, at 4 o'clock we're gonna go meet this demoniac, So I don't know. Talk about that, and how do you? I mean, it's part of this. We're talking about learning. How do you make that part of someone's education?
That's a good question.
I kind of figured that'd be your response there, Bill.
One of the classes we have here at Kingswood that I get the privilege of teaching is spiritual conflict resolution, and I really think, in terms of recognizing spiritual conflict and resolving it, is knowing who you are in Christ and keeping up your own in terms of regular, regular victory and regular sense of confidence of who you are in Christ is that consistent walk with Christ and that consistent spending time in the Word, spending time before the Lord, and just taking that time to kind of cover yourself with the Spirit's presence in your life. Um, you know, there's a good book that's out. I'm working myself through the book now. It's Four Views on Spiritual Warfare, or Four Views on Understanding Spiritual Warfare, something like that. And the authors kind of present the gamut, present the spectrum of how spiritual warfare is viewed, all the way from that spirits are demythologized, uh, all the way to almost the point that there's a demon behind every bush.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so coming to a recognition of what does scriptures actually teach about spiritual activity in your life. I'm of the persuasion that says that the spirit world is very real, and having spent about 15 years in a context where the spirit world is very real, I've come clearly to the conclusion that there is a spirit world. It's very active, but we don't have to be afraid of it. We should respect it.
Yeah.
We should recognize that it is dangerous, but in Christ we have everything we need. 2 Peter 1, 3 through 10, that passage, his divine power has given us everything we need for life and godliness through our knowledge of him who called us by his own glory and goodness. That's a powerful scripture. And of course, the Ephesians 6 passage is a great help as well. But over and over again, we are just given this vote of confidence that in Christ we have everything we need. And as we continue to learn, we continue to discover more and more how we can live in victory. So I think there is an educational process to it, but there's also a deeply kind of spiritual process to it too.
Bill, is the title of that book Understanding Spiritual Warfare, Four Views?
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah, okay. We've linked that into our show notes.
What about James K. Bealby and Paul Rhodes Eddy? Does that sound right?
And so some of the contributors, Gregory Boyd is there.
Oh, okay.
Peter Wagner is there. So the recognized names are Walter Wink is there. So you'll recognize
All right,
well, we got the link for that.
Yeah, we
for
have
everybody.
that for our listeners. Bill, take just a moment to talk about your time in Zambia and just how does that kind of inform your teaching and even impact what you're doing now?
Maybe I can respond on three different levels. When it was a tremendous privilege for my wife and I to be serving in Zambia. And while I was there, I worked with quite a few missionaries, and I saw missionaries that were just tremendous at cross-cultural communication. They were proficient in the language. They had developed deep relationship with Zambians. You know, Sub-Saharan Africa, like many other parts of the world, are event-oriented cultures. They're not time-oriented cultures like we are. Like, I know we've only got so many minutes left in this program.
Yeah, hurry it up.
And so oftentimes when we would travel in Zambia, a typical question would be, now, are we on Zambian time or are we on American time? And so if we're on Zambian time, we could leave 20 or 30 or 40 minutes later. It wasn't a big deal. But if we were on United States time, it was we leave precisely. If you're 5 minutes late, you get left. And so I saw missionaries that were just fantastic in serving, but I also saw behaviors that were exhibited that made me want to explore further what needed to be in a missionary's life to make him or her to be perceived as competent. Because, you know, competency ought to lead to effectiveness. You can't be a good teacher or you can't be a good pastor unless you've got skills and gifts and abilities to do those things well.
Right.
And so that really piqued my curiosity on an educator's level, is what I saw and experienced my own self in Zambia. What made you to be effective, or made you to be competent, or what made you to be perceived as incompetent on a professional level as a missionary? And so I became very curious as to the intercultural competencies that were needed to serve well. And then on a ministry level, that was more of a professional level. On a ministry level, um, I came to really, the more and more I went along in ministry, cross cultural ministry, the more and more I became interested in what does it take to develop deep levels of empathy and connection with people. Someone said, I wish I knew who said this quote, but someone says, I refuse to violate the dignity of a person for whom Christ died.
Ooh.
And so often in ministry, it almost seems like we do that, whether
Yeah.
we do it intentionally, I hope not, but certainly sometimes unintentionally we do that. And I've just come to the place where I say, I want to do as much as I can to value people, to respect people, and to communicate in the classroom. That's one thing I picked up in Zambia, was deepened at least in Zambia, was this idea that we're all equal in God's eyes. And then maybe on a personal level, um, we know this word ethnocentrism, the fact that we can come across our own behaviors, beliefs, can come across as superior to others. And I discovered that deep in my skin lurks ethnocentrism. And I had to learn to recognize it, and I had to learn how to control it,
Yeah.
and I had to learn how to not let it come out. And so, coming to have the position to be perceived as a learner, to take on a spirit of humility, um, to be careful of the behaviors that I communicate that I know mean one thing in my culture, but I don't know, I may not know what means in another culture. For example, I'm told in Albania to shake your head like this means no. To shake your head like this means yes. And so when North American missionaries go to Albania, they really have a hard time. Is that what you mean? No. Or yes, that's what I mean. So learning
Sure.
those kinds of simple behaviors. And so as an educator, my experience in Zambia just has taken me back because I've seen within myself, I've seen what I think, based on the research that I did for my dissertation, what it takes to be perceived as competent, which will lead to effectiveness. And on a ministry level, just coming to value people that are different than me, that we're still equal in the eyes of
Yeah.
God.
Time's beginning to get away from us here. There's a video clip I want to show here. Now, this video clip is from Soul Searching, and this is a huge study on the American life, or excuse me, the religious life of American teenagers, and it's going to dovetail into something that I heard at the conference, and I want you to speak to. So let's watch this video clip, and then I'll ask my question.
Yeah.
No sound.
I had a crash. You're just gonna have to move along with that one.
Okay.
I don't have
Well,
it.
listen. The question, Bill, is I heard over and over again. I don't think that there was one institution that there was an exception. One of the concerns I heard with incoming freshmen at all of our institutions is biblical illiteracy. Just take a moment to talk about that, and at least in the context there, in an educational context, what they mean by that.
Mm. Well, it's no new truth to say that we live, whichever side of the border we live on, we live in an increasingly secularized society. And even Canada is more secularized than the United States. And so when you have naturalistic worldviews, and when you have a new tolerance and a pantheon of gods that we're just surrounded by, with the church being increasingly marginalized, and you have students that are coming out of that world into our Christian college settings. It is a great challenge, and you're right. At the symposium that we were at, over and over again, we kept hearing about that. And so yeah, we've had students. I have had students who come to class, and I had a student ask me a question one time, and I thought he was joking at first, but he was dead serious about a particular theology question that he had, and I realized this fellow is not joking at all. And it was the kind of questions that 20 years ago would be taken as just this is normal kind of information.
Sure.
We live in a day where we have a new normal of ignorance, and so we have to recognize that that there is the challenge, but in the challenge lies the opportunity.
Sure.
And so it's helping students that I don't want to say dumb it down because
No.
that's not what I mean at all. But it is taking them from where they're at, which is biblical illiteracy, and leading them to that place. And so, recognizing the limitations ought to inform our education. And so, as we think about where we start and the methods and the content as to what we can take. That is a great challenge and an opportunity for me as an educator to think about how can I take a student who knows very little, hardly knows what the Old Testament is compared to the New Testament, and take them from there. So the clip that I hope we can see just really says a lot about our students here.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to show the clip because we had a crash within the program, but to me, there's a message to the church, and within the research, one of the things that Christian Smith and Melinda Denton point to is that within evangelicalism, there needs to be much more intentionality on doctrine, on theology, and that we're kind of running away from that. And they say that the research seems to suggest that that's a mistake, that the youth where faith is meaningful are the very ones where this is really being drilled into them. Not indoctrination, but actually teaching what is this, what's our doctrine about Jesus Christ, what's our Christology, what's our doctrine about the church, ecclesiology, what's our doctrine about God, theism, and that we don't need to water that down. Yep. It's in the distinctions that their faith becomes rooted and grounded.
It's really interesting too that you don't hear it so much, but you hear of churches here and there that have youth groups of dozens and scores of young people, young adults who are coming for Bible studies.
Yeah.
Shock for Bible studies.
What?
And for basic catechism issues, they're coming, and there might be 25 or 30 that are there. Well, that says to me, not only have they hit on some important content that speaks into an empty niche there, but they've also got a methodology that they're doing something right.
Yeah.
And that's what I think we have to tap into more.
All right. Well, Bill, time has got away from us here. Real quick, if people are interested in Kingswood University, I imagine they can go where? Kingswood.edu? Is that the...
Kingswood.edu, yep.
All right. Bill, thanks so much for taking time out of a busy schedule to be with us today.
Well, thank you so much, Tony and Heath and Matt, for being there and making it happen.
All right. I guess we'll see you. You'll be down in South Carolina in a couple of weeks or 3 weeks, something like that?
Yeah, of course. I'm coming for the grandkids, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we'll have a Coca-Cola and boiled peanuts waiting for you. All right, man.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, Bill, a neat guy. He was raised here in the Southeast.
Yeah.
The great state of Georgia. Georgia.
Well...
what you don't want to.
It is a state.
You don't want to concede that it's a great state.
Oh man.
All right, here.
Oh no.
Oh.
All my things have crashed. Oh goodness. No, I think we got it. Let's give it a shot. It's time for.
Hey.
Download of the week.
Yay! And I'm still scrambling to get everything set back up properly, but
right.
So I can't cut to my camera, so you're gonna just
That's
be the hand model
Our
for all
download
this
of the
time.
week is Pocket Casts. Now this is a podcasting app, and it will gather both video and audio podcast. You're not going to be able to see Master TG, but I know you really like this, especially on Android.
I have a little video right here. So they're up to version 4. They're developing Android first, which is different from most developers.
And wrong.
I've actually got the volume turned down there. This has got a whole, but anyways, we won't listen to the music as it's playing. But they found out that, I don't know if it's because Apple has their own podcasting app or whatever it is. They were selling Android copies of this software 5 to 1. So for every one copy that they're selling on iOS, they were selling 5 here. Long time ago, when Apple released their podcasting app, we said, what's the what's the best Android thing? And at the time it was Dog Catcher. That's a very powerful podcasting application. But what they've done here in version 4 of Pocket Cast, which has been out for a while, is they have created something equally as powerful and yet beautiful. And Dog Catcher looks like a dog. I mean, that's why it's named that. It really does. This is a beautiful application. The 4.0 redesign of this is great. There is a version for iOS, and supposedly they are developing version 4, but right now it's on version 3, and so you can kind of see the interface differences here. But it has become my preferred thing. Like if they get it up to 4.0 here, Apple's podcasting application is gone for me. Like I'm done with it. Because it synchronizes podcasts, it does all those same things, and it does it in a much more beautiful and efficient way. So this is actually an Android pick for all of you Android users. Pocket Cast.
And so is it? What's the cost? Is it free? Paid?
I think I paid $1.99 for it. I don't know if that was on sale or not.
It's $1.99 on iOS, but I actually switched for some reasons, but and really liking it. Liking it.
Yeah, well, you're talking about version 3. So even version 3 is functional. I mean, it's functional and it does its thing. But I can't. I'm really hoping that supposedly they're working on bringing the 4.0 upgrade to iOS, and that's just got to happen. When that happens, I mean, then.
But wait a minute. So can you get the Technology Show on Pocket Cast?
Yes.
Okay. Then
and in fact, guys, I realized the other day that I hadn't updated our image. Like it was still a really low quality, and so when you get it now here. There it is on the left, and now that is I believe 900 by 900 pixel.
And you need to go to all the podcast apps and download.
That's
all
right,
of
and rate them
episodes.
all 5 stars.
5-star review.
Forget the crash you saw today and the technical difficulties. We are a 5-star, high quality.
What I liked is
podcast.
during the Bill's interview, at one point the video flew in. Did you see that?
Yeah.
This is the droid app you're looking for.
That was my fault. I'll take the blame on that one. I'm actually finding out that the video from Melinda Denton and all of that's actually not on me, but I wasn't going to say anything. I was going to take the fall, and I still will for you on that. Hey, before we switch on to our next thing, before we were to lose anybody after Bill's interview, I don't know if there'll be people who are exiting, but go to thetechnologyshow.com/giveaway and sign up to enter this set of Theologian trading cards. We're giving away 3 sets.
Yes.
3 sets, so 3 winners. Enter often.
Let's see who our random theologian of the week is. It is Peter Martyr
This random is just not working there.
I love it. I love
it. One that has an English name. Ephraim the Syrian. That's who we had last week.
All right. Hey, now let me ask you this, Matthew. This is kind of off the cuff.
Yeah.
Would the video play now, the video clip, or no?
The video clip it's an error in the video file that you sent me. It's not. It's So I can play any other video clip. You can just ask for anything else. I'll cue it up for you.
All right, let's move on to They Said It.
Read my lips.
I'm going to say this again.
I've never taken steroids or HGH.
I took the initiative in creating the internet.
The Macintosh, of all the machines I've ever seen, is the only one that meets that standard.
I'm not a crook.
If you know what you're doing here, slide out.
On advice from my physicians and therapists, and with the blessing of church leadership, I am taking a medical leave of absence from the church to enter a 30-day residential treatment program beginning this weekend. I'm very sorry to be away from the church on such short notice, but on the advice of my team of caregivers, I must accept the need to go now. I expect to be back in early February. Stephen Shoemaker, senior minister at Myers Park Baptist Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. Source APB News.
A specialized airplane like the Pilatus PC-6 is needed to safely transport Bible translators through the island's treacherous terrain. These planes were designed specifically to operate in harsh environments and take off and land from short runways carved out of thick jungles. The Pilatus PC-6 can transport Bible translators, critical supplies, and scriptures where no one else can. Inaccessibility puts Bible translators' efforts at risk. Bruce Smith, president and CEO of Whitcliffe Associates and a pilot himself. Source, Whitcliffe Associates.
This version is not your parents' Superman. It is much darker and considerably more violent. In fact, the last half hour of the film felt like you were watching a kid play a combat video game that seemed as if it would never end. It is important to mention that there are some good life lessons, such as taking the first step in faith, believing in oneself, and that everyone has the potential to be a force for good. Scott Roth on his review of the latest Superman movie, Man of Steel. Source, ChristianCinema.com.
As a whole, the network morning shows presented 44 statements in favor of gay marriage, none opposed, and 56 neutral. The network evening newscast presented 46 statements in favor of gay marriage, none opposed, and 54 neutral. Each cable news channel was broken down individually. Given the three very different programming strategies of the channels, it was an interesting move, as all three presented far more supporting arguments than opposing arguments. Alex Wetprin, senior editor at Media Bistro. Source, TV Newser. All right, here. So we could go anywhere.
Four great stories. I hate that we're kind of...
Yep.
Can it be okay if we just run over a little bit? Because these are all really good.
Well, I want us to talk about the very first one because we actually, you and I both just admire Stephen Shoemaker. We admire his church. This is a pastor who, just needed to take a break from ministry.
Right. This was not. This was something where he was experiencing depression and anxiety. It had gotten to the point where he was drinking, had not got to the point of alcoholism that I suspect, but he was self-medicating and just kind of said, whoa, this is not good. And my favorite phrase from this quote is, on the advice of my team of caregivers, that from inside the church and outside the church, God gave him the grace to surround himself with people that allowed him to put himself first. So he's doing this 30-day treatment program, and then is not coming immediately back after that. It's going to be gone for 5 or 6 more months.
Yeah, but and I think you and I both, in our conversation about this story when we first ran across it 2 weeks ago, our high level of respect for the church and the church leadership to say, we're going to work with you, and we're going to be supportive of you during this time, and supportive of his family. That's huge.
Yeah, like a lot of I hope that we are turning the corner, that what this man is doing is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of strength. My prayer is that during his time of recovery, that he's restored, emotionally and physically and all of that, but that also kind of learn, how do you not get into that? And I think, the conversation we just had with Bill Pete, how do we train students to not get to that point of burnout?
It's not just training for students and ministers, but that's training for churches too,
right?
Church leadership as well.
Yeah.
The second story, I'll just say this, that Wycliffe is in a promotional phase right now where they're raising money for this plane. So we just, worthy cause, wanted to put this in the show notes. You can click on the story. There's a picture of the plane that they're talking about. The Pilatus PC-6, and so
we're not talking about like a Jetstream luxury.
Very functional.
Yeah.
And in the They Said It clip that we read, they just talk about this is a plane that can get down quick and get off of runways that are just carved out of the jungle. And so if you're looking for a worthy cause, please click on that, and you can discover more about it.
Yeah.
All right, Men of Steel.
Yeah.
Men of Steel.
That's the new name for our show. We're going to be rebranding.
There's the name of our show today. Men of Steel.
I had the opportunity to go a week before the release date and go to a private screening. And in Atlanta, I took my son Drake. He is 6, and it was an overwhelming movie for him. It was just, I don't want to spoil the movie in any way, but the opening scene is Superman being born. So it's a woman on a table having a baby, and it's just like, oh dear. So I regret taking him. I wish I had seen the movie first and then thought about it, and I may have still let him go see it. But there were some frightening images to him. I don't think it scarred him to life. We have had there's not a day gone by we have not talked about the movie, and the movie just, good or bad, I mean, got him thinking about some things, and we've had some really good conversations about it.
So you know that every movie comes out and they have these things attached to them. And it's called a rating that kind of gives you an inclination even before you go see it as to how that works.
Yeah, the review here, the one that we read from, says it's not kid friendly, and so
Ashley and I went to see it last Friday, and she, not being she's not a huge comic book nerd or fan or anything like that, whereas I love Superman mythology and all that, very high on the mythology part of things. And so for her, it was a little overkill to get a lot of that. For me, it was a movie that actually the further out I am from seeing it, the better I like it. Like initially, because of the way it's laid out, it's not laid out in a linear story, so that the actual editing of the film is interesting and unique. That created, some interesting feelings as I was going through.
I don't think it's
hearing you two talk about it. What amazed me was the two of you talk about the soundtrack.
Oh man,
yeah.
And you want to talk about that? And it's James Horner,
Hans Zimmer.
Hans Zimmer, sorry,
yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, what am I thinking?
Same guy that did all the music for. He basically works for Chris Nolan. Did all the Dark Knight.
Did
movies.
A fantastic job. Very, very emotional. Last week you came back and you said that there were portions where you were crying. All right.
Right.
There are some powerful. Yeah. There's a powerful Kevin Costner moment.
Yeah.
That it's emotional.
Yeah.
It's very emotional. So I think they did a good job. But yeah, it's different. It's not. Superman's always kind of been the ultra clean cut, and it's not that he's dark or anything.
No.
But it's just I think what it is bringing into the backstory and all the situations that are happening there, and how that plays out in the modern world, and how would people respond to this guy if all of a sudden there's somebody from another planet. The theoretical things like that added the modern take on it. Very interesting.
The thing that I went into this movie with really unrealistic expectations, because going into the movie I watched Superman 2, Superman 3, and then a little bit of Superman Returns, which is banned at my house, but I watched some clips of it online, and I don't ever want to talk about Superman Returns again, because it's just evil and all, just bad. And so I went in with these really high expectations, and in so many ways those expectations were exceeded, because in so many ways this movie was not what I expected. And it's the thing about Superman, and I've said it before, the thing that makes him Superman is not his powers. It's this instilled instinct to always know what's right and what's wrong. And what you see in this movie is he's not there yet. Like, this is a guy, he's trying to figure it out. And I just love the movie.
And that plays out more in the childhood stuff and the flashbacks to that.
Yeah, it's great.
It really does. As it comes through, I don't know, it's an adoptive story.
Yeah.
It really is. And so it's about a stepdad instilling fatherly stuff. That's a big part of the story. Superman's always high on Christian imagery. He's always there's always parallels to Christ. Yeah. And what's his name? And I'm ashamed I can't remember it right now. Who's the guy who directed this movie?
Zack Snyder.
Zack Snyder. Yeah. He played that up big time in this film.
Yeah. Well, the creators of Superman, Jerry Siegel and can't remember the other guy's name, but when they created Superman in 1938, they're both Jewish. So it's Moses. It is the story of Moses. Just kind of laid out there, and that's always
you guys.
been very
I'm
strong.
just learning so much. I never knew there was so many Judeo-Christian.
Oh man,
aspects.
there's tons of things, and there's a scene. Again, not to spoil the movie, but it's the decision point about what are we gonna do here?
Yep.
And it happens in a church.
Yeah.
With a priest.
Yeah.
And there's Clark Kent sitting there, and behind him, it's because of the kind of lens that was being used, it's out of focus, but behind him is the stained glass window of the Garden of Gethsemane.
Yeah.
And Jesus there at this crucial what are we gonna do?
Imagery.
Am I gonna sacrifice myself and my ability to remain, removed from this situation, or am I going to jump in and face the consequences of what it means to go through with this? And so the imagery is there. It's really cool. It's really good. And there's another moment where it comes down to saving somebody, and it's literally a cross pose. There's two distinct times in this movie when he's laid out like Jesus on the cross. And it's intended to do that. Like he brought that imagery into it. Very interesting. Yeah.
I mean, there's this, and this is in one of the trailers, so I don't think I'm giving anything away, but there's just this pivotal moment in the movie, but also I think this pivotal moment in all of our lives where Jarrell says to him, Russell Crowe's character says, "You can save her. You can save them all."
Hey,
So
so I came out of this. This was my first reaction coming out of the movie was Russell Crowe made a much better Jor-El than Javert. Let me just put that out there and say, much better Jor-El than Javert. And if he ever burst out into the Kryptonian national anthem, I would have been done. I just would have been done with that.
Tony, your brother points out in the chat room that Man of Steel is still less violent than the Bible.
And that he based his Father's Day sermon off the movie.
If you subscribe to churchleaders.com newsletter, that's how I found out about the screening through Grace Hill Media. They not only did a screening, but Warner Brothers works with Grace Hill Media. They promoted this heavily to pastors. A lot of sermon resources, message material, trailers to be used. Man, there's a whole page of pastoral resources on this movie.
So
and
your big summer series, you'll be dressed up in the Superman tights and be preaching. So if anybody wants to see
for Father's Day, I was gonna buy for $20 at some Walmart. They had the really nice capes, and I was gonna get one of those and wear it. And I will be. It's going up here on the wall.
Show title: Heath, Man in Tights.
No, just
all right.
The cape.
We are way over. Real quick, let me tell you. Next week we have Dave and Donna Tolan in studio. These are some of our favorite people. They also served with Bill Peed in Zambia, so it's going to be kind of nice to talk to them about that. About that. They right now serve at Southern Wesleyan University, still under Global Partners, but have had a huge influence on students there at Southern Wesleyan and continue to do that.
Yeah, and it's very interesting calling that they have. So they're not hires of the school.
Right.
They're Global Partners missionaries to. Did you already say this? To Southern Wesleyan University. Yeah. So it's a very interesting thing that they've got. Yeah.
So they'll be in studio. Heath's going to be gone. Headed to Oregon, aren't you?
Portland. That's right. Estacada, Pacific Northwest District Youth Camp.
Yeah. So you're with the speaker.
Yeah. Allegedly.
Well. Yeah, I mean,
and I'll be speaking on the Man of Steel.
I love it. On July the 2nd, Paul Tillman is going to be our guest. This is a guy that has really, there are times he's contributed to the show through emails and stuff. And when I got his last email, I thought, I'm going to call this guy, and had a delightful conversation with him. He's going to join us, and really looking forward to that.
I call this guy and say, "Leave us alone, man."
Why are you badgering us?
Why do you keep doing? No.
If we have you on the show, will you then leave us alone? No.
Yeah.
On July 16th, we're going to have Dr. Kenneth Skank with us. He is the Wesley Seminary Dean. And on July the 30th, Dr. Devin Smith. He's the Director of Online Learning at Oklahoma Wesleyan University. On August the 20th, David Higgle is going to be with us. And David, his big thing is working with pastors, what he desires, and he's part of a group of men and women who've gotten together. They desire to see people last longer in ministry. Their big concern is the attrition rate in ministry. Mm-hmm. And Heath, this kind of dovetails into that very first story that we talked about. And what practices can we build in within congregations and within ministers themselves to see longevity in the ministry. All right, Heath, where can our listeners find you?
If you go to heathmullican.com, it's got links to Google+, Facebook, Twitter, all that. So heathmullican.com.
All right, Teach?
Yeah, I'm at matthewtg.com. And instead of heading there, though, you'd make my day if you headed over to our show site where we are giving away a copy of Theologian Trading Cards. Enter to win.
Yeah, and again, big thanks to Zondervan. I mean, there are 3 copies. They're going to send them directly to you. We're just going to give them the addresses. So enter often, tell your friends, and we hope that you are one of the winners. If you want to do further research on anything we discussed today, you can find all the links to the stories we covered at our website, thetechnologyshow.com. If you want to contact us, send your emails to thetechnologyshow@gmail.com, or better yet, you may call us and leave us a message by dialing 3049 Theology. That's 304-986-5649. Leave us a message. We may even play those comments on the air. As always, thanks for joining us. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Adios.
Wah, wah, wah.